that there's a possibility that we could be looking at DeBoer wondering if he's the long-term answer at coach for the Tide?
I'm starting to feel like Alabama, I can't believe I'm saying this, Craig, is a sleeper. Fourth easiest schedule in the SEC this year. Ryan Williams is back. I think the friendly, these early season games against Florida State and Wisconsin, that is friendly for Alabama.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
So you're going to have the suck uniforms the entire season, but 3 games will give you with the best uniform. Those are the issues I have. The powder blues out for the Chargers. That should be every game. The Miami Dolphins old uniforms that they throw it back to. That should be your uniform, not the trash you wear now. The Patriots. You ever see them throw back with a little football player in the helmet? It is beautiful. Yeah. But let's keep the trash uniform.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Things you have to look at is what the team has the following day, especially when it comes to bullpen usage. A lot of the things I like to attack is you see these extra inning games, these games get drawn out, these bullpens get worn, or if someone gets shelled the first 3 innings and they got to go to the pen, early, that's a good spot to kind of hop in the middle of the next game. You got a tired bullpen, right? You try and take advantage there, maybe with an over, maybe with the money line. We're getting plus money on a favorite at that point.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
His run in Salt Lake is over, but obviously the intimidation of a guy that's been around that long in Gundy and in this guy, if you look at their cases, they're very similar. It's been going on forever, right? And it's time for a change, I think, in Stillwater and in Salt Lake. I got to be honest with you. And believe me, if they lose again, they're going to get rid of him.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
FS1 cancels almost all their shows, dumping host Joy Taylor, plus Congress introducing new legislation around college athletics and NIL. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Front Office Sports Today, presented by Atlassian. From FOS Studios here in New York City, I'm Baker Machado.
And I'm Renee Washington, and thank you guys so much for joining us as each and every weekday we chat the biggest stories happening in the business and culture of sports. We also have more on tonight's Major League Baseball All-Star Game and the Tampa Bay Rays finding their new owner soon. But first, let's dive right into the shoot-around.
Yeah, and let's start in the WNBA as the Portland Fire are officially back. The team brought back their original name and unveiled their new logo for fans on Tuesday. And the Fire played 3 seasons from 2000 to 2002 and will become the W's 15th franchise starting next season. This after they paid a $125 million expansion fee. And Renee, fans are so ready for the team, they've already sold out 11,000 season tickets already.
And this is the beauty of bringing back the Portland Fire. I remember growing up seeing this franchise, and although they had a losing record every season, they were 500 in 2002, they went under because of financial issues, they still had Jackie Stiles, 2001 Rookie of the Year. They still had Telly Bevilacqua, just so many great names that they had play there, but they also had that rich history and fandom. So to bring back the Fire, which they got the community outpouring even back then, it's going to be a resurgence in Portland, especially with the Fire officially as their name.
And by the way, they only have about 6 months to get everything together because the expansion draft will be happening then, so then at least they'll be getting players. Meanwhile, let's move to the NFL. ESPN's Adam Schefter is reporting that the Jets have signed Garrett Wilson to a new 4-year, $130 million contract extension. This now makes him one of the highest paid wide receivers in the league. Now, the deal also comes with $90 million in guaranteed money, and is the first time in NFL history that a receiver will get over an average of $31 million after only playing 3 seasons in the league.
Yeah, but he also only played every single game since he joined the Jets back in 2022. 51 out of 51 possible games. He also has had more than 1,000 yards each season. And although he's had 7 different quarterbacks, he was one of the big targets for the Jets going into this offseason. So with this $130 million contract extension, that $90 million guaranteed, as you talked about, that's one major step. So the Jets, although it's been a little bit messy in the quarterback position of who their QB1 is season after season, they at least have their big star receiver in Garrett that they've extended.
Well, meanwhile, big ratings for Netflix's coverage of the first ever all-women's boxing card, featuring the final match between Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano, as the streamer said that the fight drew an estimated average minute audience of 6 million global viewers. And here in the U.S., the estimated average minute audience was 4.2 million viewers watched from opening to closing bell. And Renee, that made it the most watched professional women's sports event of all of 2025.
And in person, just under 20,000 in attendance at Madison Square Garden with a gate of $2.63 million. That's the highest ever for a women's boxing card at the highest gate for a female sporting event. I love to see this. Now, Katie Taylor did.
Yes, she did win. Yes.
Yeah, won
Much
by
more
majority
decisively.
decision, so she swept the trilogy. But this was a bigger win for boxing for women's sports, especially because you had, as you mentioned, #1 in Netflix for the United States, but also top 10 in 43 other countries, including Australia, Ireland. Of course, both of these fighters from Irish and Puerto Rican descent, so had the international connection already. But to see how the second part of the trilogy went so well, with having the highest at 47 million viewers, most watched professional women's sports across the U.S., this had a high bar to try to pass. But they did a fantastic job of rolling out this all-women card in a way that garnered enough attention that they didn't need Mike Tyson, they didn't need Jake Paul, because these two women alone helped lead the charge to get it done.
Yeah, and by the way, if you want to watch a great documentary, you can watch Countdown, Serrano versus Taylor. These two hosts also featured in that, which I think also helped for the attention of people going to watch it. But I do also love,
I was going to say more importantly, Netflix did a good job of not only the live viewership, but even within that next 24-hour window, the playback was also extremely high as well, factored into that number. So we helped, but I think it was Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano.
And no tech issues either, which was what happened with the Tyson-Paul fight as well. All right, let's stay in media as some big changes are happening over at FS1 as the network canceled 3 of their 5 daily shows, including Breakfast Ball and Speak, which was hosted by Joy Taylor, Paul Pierce, and Keyshawn Johnson. Now, they are going to keep Colin Cowherd's show and Nick Wright's show. So why did the network pull these shows? And who are some of the big names that are being looked at to replace all of them? Let's dive into this and a little bit more in today's big main event. All right, let's bring in our Mike McCarthy. He's the author of the Tuned In Media Newsletter. Of course, you can read that on frontofficesports.com. So, Mike, why did FS1 pull the plug on these shows?
Well, there's a couple of reasons behind this Monday morning massacre. The first is obviously very low ratings. These shows just weren't drawing eyeballs. They weren't drawing audiences enough to pay the kind of talent that they had. And 3, they weren't, really propping up other shows. Shows like this are designed to be a lead-in for the really key shows like Colin Cowherd or Nick Wright. And if they're not, providing that kind of lead-in, what good are they? That was number 1. Also, number 2, I think this is fallout from the departure of Charlie Dixon. These were all 3 of these shows were his brainchilds, his ideas. He cast them. He came up with the ideas. He put the stars in. So now that they completely cut ties with Charlie Dixon, I think they're getting rid of his shows as well.
And in addition to cutting ties with Dixon in the lawsuit, somebody else they cut ties with 2 years ago, Shannon Sharpe. I know it's been brought back up since that buyout agreement happened with Fox Sports and he left Undisputed. It feels like there's been a ripple effect over at FS1. Now, Joy Taylor is one of the names that's out there not renewing her contract, but as we know, Mike, other talent could potentially be brought on to different shows. What do you anticipate is the future for FS1? Do they have the ability to kind of turn things around, bring the talent onto different shows, or are we going to see them possibly going into having less programming, needing to maybe merge with another network?
Yeah, it's really a great point. It feels like picking Skip Bayless over Shannon Sharpe was the original sin for this studio lineup that has never recovered. I do think there is, a silver lining here. I think some of these talents, like Keyshawn Johnson or Michael Irvin, could end up on some new shows, if there are new shows. I think right now, FS1 is looking at everything, new studio shows, but also probably licensing deals. It's cheaper to buy than to build, right? Go out and get somebody else's show and license it. Or even I could see them putting some sports where studio shows used to be, some soccer, NASCAR, whatever, some sports programs. So I think, it's really a blank slate right now. I don't think it's even definite that we are going to see 3 studio shows replacing 3 canceled studio shows. I think they're looking at everything.
Well, here's our offer for them to license Front Office Sports today. They can at least take half an hour of their programming right there. Mike,
but I definitely won't be cast.
No, you for sure will be, Cass. Please, Mike. You'll be one of the stars of the show. Mike, do we know potentially, I know you wrote this on frontofficesports.com, any potential names that might be discussed to add to FS1 maybe?
Well, I think the biggest free agent out there right now is Tony Reality. Last night, Front Office Sports reached out to Tony while he was on vacation with his family, and he said he'd definitely be interested in talking to FS1. He sees his future in both TV and in the digital space, where he's starting his own YouTube show. So I think he would be probably their first call. Don't forget, you've got Max Kellerman still on the sidelines, still collecting his ESPN buyout money, so who could be there? And one name that I keep hearing that FS1 really likes and has really liked for a long time is Kay Adams. I know that you two, as am I, are fans of Good Morning Football. And, you know, I would argue that Good Morning Football original cast was one of the best morning shows of the last 15, 20 years. So I could see them becoming very interested in Kay Adams. So I think, you know what I mean, there's a number of names out there, a number of talents. I think if I'm the producer over there, I'm going with an established talent like a Kay or Reali or a Kellerman who brings their own audience rather than trying to take some local personality like Danny Parkins or Craig Carton and turn them into a national personality. By the way, Danny Parkins could also fit that bill of somebody who could be recycled into another show. So we might not have seen the last of him either on FS1.
By the way, I'm old enough to remember when Max Kellerman had a Fox show. IMAX didn't last very long, but I remember that show.
Well, he actually he was the original host of Around the Horn, and if you remember, he went over to Fox to launch a show called IMAX, and that's how Tony Reality ended up as the host of Around the Horn.
And the rest, they say,
full circle.
All history. Full circle indeed. Our Mike McCarthy, of course, you can read his stuff in the Tuned In newsletter every week. Mike, thank you so very much for joining us. And still ahead, guys, the Big Dumper wins the Home Run Derby. Plus, the Tampa Bay Rays have found themselves a new owner. That's next.
Like Montreal, has a new coach. Like I might be the new coach of Montreal in 2 weeks. Like they have a new coach all the time, and they always have, oh yeah, we're playing a new system. They're like, they have a bunch of 20-year-old players and kids on the pitch. Anyone that's good, they sell and they trade for money all the time. Like it's a real disaster. But they hit a new low tonight, getting eliminated by the Forge.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
That is the idea. It really is for in-game live. You said it. The home team who's a double-digit or close to it anyway favorite and get off to a bad start and actually have them trailing by 5, 6, 7 to the point where you get it at Pick'em. And I don't know how many times. I'd like to know a stat of how many times a team that's been favored by double digits, trailed by double digits, and actually won the game. I bet it's a lot.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
You've got issues up and down here. The bullpen is falling apart, to put it nicely. And have you seen the schedule for the Yankees for the rest of the month of July here? We have Seattle, then we have the Cubs, then you have Atlanta, then you have Toronto again in Toronto. That really didn't go all that well this week. And then you have Philadelphia and Tampa. Good luck to the Yankees in July here.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
They're still trying to throw Dalton Knecht's name in trades, and I don't even know if he's viewed as a positive asset still.
And that's a crazy thing. Dalton Knecht, if you look at FanDuel, Dalton Knecht 20-plus points at plus 120. He's giving you no indication that he's that right there. I mean, Kevin, I would be more likely if we knew we were going to get the minutes. Bronny James, 10-plus points at plus 118.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
And welcome back, everyone, to Front Office Sports Today with Renee, Washington, Baker Machado. So we're more than halfway through the Major League Baseball season so far, and all the attention now is on All-Star Week in Atlanta. And, of course, a big surprise happening in the Major League Baseball draft with the Nationals taking a pick that nobody thought was going to be at number 1. So let's bring in our Eric Fisher, who is live for us at Truist Park in Atlanta, the place where the All-Star Game is happening. Eric, good to see you as always. Let's start with the draft. The Nationals taking high school star Eli Willits number 1 in the draft. A lot of people didn't expect him to take this 17-year-old number 1.
Yeah, this was a little bit of a stunner that if you went through all the mocks of, people who spend a lot more time even than I do looking at high school and college players, the mocks over and over again had LSU pitcher Cade Anderson at the top. Seems like he's much more pro ready, just led LSU to the College World Series title and was the tournament's most outstanding player, just as Paul Skeens was 2 years ago, and also was the number 1 pick and also came from LSU, and all the same things. And it was seeming like it was going to be Skeens 2.0. Nationals, who just fired their president of baseball operations, Mike Rizzo, and manager Davey Martinez last week, went in this very other direction for this high school player who won't even be 18 until December, but they really feel like the whole package of skills that he has made him, despite that youth, the best player in the draft.
Well, it is interesting for the Major League Baseball draft in comparison to other leagues because, A, you had none of the players actually in attendance this year for the first time in 15 years, but also because of that pipeline trajectory for players that get drafted, Major League Baseball has come out saying they're trying to make it a quicker process for guys that get drafted, much like we saw Paul Skeens NL Rookie of the Year, much like last year with 5 guys that were drafted and then have already had their Major League debut. Someone like Eli, who is only 17, the youngest since Ken Griffey in 1987 to get drafted, how does this draft class of about a third of them being 17 or 18 years old help or even hurt that process for Major League Baseball in expediting getting to the majors from the minors?
Yeah, this was a little bit of a detour in that because you are correct. The last few years, there has been a real push to try to narrow that timeline between when a player gets drafted and reduce that time that they need in the minor leagues. There was a real run on high school shortstops this time around, particularly in the first round. And so, we'll have to see next year after, whether this becomes a new kind of trend or if this is just a one-year blip in sort of the broader push. But this was a notable departure.
Yeah, and let's talk about one of those high school shortstops that a lot of people thought was going to go number 1, and that was Ethan Holiday. His dad, famously Matt Holiday, fell to number 4 to the Colorado Rockies. And Eric, we know we don't talk very positively about this team very often, but it seems like this might be a good cornerstone franchise player for this team.
Yeah, this is one of the things where the head and the heart kind of match up, and that's a nice thing to see. That, regardless of whether he went 1 or 4, Ethan Holiday has a lot of skill and should be an asset to somebody. That somebody just turns out to be your Rockies, and his dad, Matt Holiday, started his career in Denver, had 5 great seasons in Denver before moving on to several other teams, most notably the Cardinals. And again, this is just kind of a feel-good moment. Matt Holiday is still very well remembered in your hometown. And I just like this on a bunch of levels. And obviously the Rockies need to do a lot to turn around from what still could be a historically bad season. And this was a good step in the right direction.
Yeah, we love a good full circle moment. I know there was a picture circulating around of Ethan in a Rockies t-shirt when he was like 2 or 3 years old. Yeah. But I do want to shift to the Home Run Derby since that is tonight at Truist Park because we do know a lot of notable names that declined to participate in the Home Run Derby this year. Shohei Ohtani, Aaron Judge, Kyle Schwarber, Ronald Acuna Jr., a late one that was a scratch. Others like Fernando Tatis Jr. as well as Pete Alonso because they mentioned just the short timeline of rest and recovery. What are your thoughts as the Home Run Derby with that $1 million prize point that might seem enticing for many, also for others seeming like they're not as interested around wanting more rest?
Yeah, and don't forget the event itself, particularly with this timed format that's been in place for 10 years and was adjusted again last year. It's a little bit of a meat grinder. It's a real endurance test to swing and swing and swing and swing, and then also not do damage to your day job in the second half of the season. So that's part of why some of the players that you mentioned don't want to do it because it's physically very taxing and has some risk later on. But having said all of that, I really like this for younger players. We've got 3 in particular. James Wood with the Nationals, O'Neal Cruz with the Pirates, Junior Caminero with the Rays. Each of which make less than $1 million. So if they win tonight, they more than double their entire year's salary in one night. And this has been the case for a number of players. Pete Alonso had some of his home run derby wins before he signed for big money. Several other players as well. And I like the big payday aspect of this for some of those younger guys.
And then, just in terms of the skills competitions, the home run derby being the big one here, do you still like it still has the feel of a big event? We know the NBA, the skills competitions from the dunk contest and the three-point shootout have kind of lost their luster over time, but is the home run derby still a big event here for Major League Baseball?
It is, although it took a hit in the ratings last year because it went up on one of the nights against one of the nights of the Republican National Convention. For baseball, the dynamic's a little bit different, where it is still a great event, but it is still the undercard for what is still the best all-star game in all of major professional sports. The other leagues that you mentioned, they have those skill competitions as well, but in many respects, those skill competitions are better than the all-star game itself because no defense is played. So much so that the NFL had to completely rework their Pro Bowl, their all-star game, into the Pro Bowl games and a flag football competition. They had to completely rebuild this. The baseball all-star game is still an actual legitimate baseball game where pitchers crank it up to 100. And that's why you have a sort of a different pecking order where the home run derby exists in a different place relative to the game itself.
Yeah,
Eric,
definitely.
Eric, really quickly, who wins tonight?
I was gonna say, who's your pick?
I like Big Dumper. He's the odds-on favorite. Cal Raleigh, he's turning the baseball world on its head. I'm going with the favorite.
All right, Cal Raleigh. By the way, I think leads baseball right now in home runs.
Yeah.
Eric Fisher live for us at the All-Star Game at Truist Park in Atlanta. And coming up, we got the rivalry we wanted for Wimbledon, Sinner versus Alcaraz. We're diving into that next. Don't go anywhere.
I say, you crank that Soldier Boy, right? You Darvish back on the mound. Haven't seen this guy in a minute right now. Yeah, man, crank it, man. Get it going up. Hit the high. Yeah, let's go. Crank that Soldier Boy up here. Yeah. I mean, come on, man. That was big back then. Where were you? Senior high school? Or maybe even in grade school?
Bar mitzvah slate. In the bar mitzvah slate each and every weekend. The young Benny Steve was out there hitting it.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Do they practice in a public park? And Fairlawn Lodge, he said, no, they have a little facility, but it's open to the public. No, it's a public park. Like, it basically, like, there's like kids playing basketball, like,
yeah,
no, it's bad. I looked, I'm like, dear God, like, I thought, I'm like, man, I bet a lot of money on these guys. I can't believe this is where they practice, like,
yeah.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
Obviously, he didn't do great in the last two majors, and we're going home here. We're going to Northern Ireland, Royal Portage. This is Rory's the reason why we're going here. Got off to a rough start, throwing his tee shot out of bounds back in 2019. I think he'll be ready. Not yet ready to call him the winner. I still have a couple of days before I do that, but it is a home game for him. And as you saw, based on this weekend, he is playing well.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
Would be looking to get him in dynasty or keeper leagues. If I'm out of a league and I'm looking to rebuild for the next years ahead, that's where I'm looking. Yuri Perez is a special young pitcher that we're going to be talking about in that Paul Skeens, in that Tariq Skubal, in that grouping of guys. I think he can be that good. He's only 22 years old. He's the boy. So you're getting a situation here where Yuri Perez eventually is going to grow into that man of a pitcher.
Fantasy Sports Today, only on SportsGrid.
And welcome back everyone to Front Office Sports Today, brought to you by Atlassian. Atlassian Williams Racing brings two teamwork powerhouses together all around a single goal: unleash the full potential of a legendary F1 race team. From the pit lane to the podium, Atlassian software transforms teamwork. It makes possible together what would be impossible alone. Well, tennis's hottest rivalry continued at the men's Wimbledon final as Jannik Sinner defeated Carlos Alcaraz in 4 sets Sunday to win his first Wimbledon title and his 4th Grand Slam. Now, this comes as the two gave us the longest French Open final ever to record ratings. So let's bring in Gary Nathan, author of the new book, Changeover: The Rise of Carlos Alcaraz and Jannik Sinner, which, by the way, is out in August on the 19th. Gary, good to have you as always. So with Sinner finally winning after the last 6 contests against Alcaraz, what would you say the status of this rivalry is now?
Yeah, I think he was on a rough patch for sure. It was 5 in a row that Alcaraz had, but almost all of those matches were decided by super fine margins. So with Jannik, it wasn't a question of how do I drastically approach this differently. It was just getting a few things right, and the serve was really big for him at Wimbledon. And especially on the grass courts where you're rewarded for going big on the serve, he was able to tip the rivalry back in his favor in that file.
And how important, when you look at the continuation from the French Open, is it that we got a Wimbledon showdown? Of course, Sinner does cash in with a $4.05 million winner's check. Alcaraz brings in $2.05 million, increases their career earnings, so they're now 6th and 8th all-time in career earnings.
Yeah.
And they continue from the French Open. From the financial side, but also the competition side, how important was it for Sinner and Alcaraz to continue the rivalry in such a big way at Wimbledon, and also to be able to continue to climb the ranks of all-time earnings?
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable how fast we're seeing an increase in the money pumping into the sport. And you look at the earnings that these guys are making in a single season, and it might approximate what an all-time great made in their entire career back in the day. So I think the fact that, both of them are pushing each other to this level and they both seem so dominant over the era, it does seem like, their sponsor Nike has made a smart investment in these two from very early on in their career. But the paychecks for them are going to be even bigger from the endorsements and sponsorships than they are on court. Usually on court's just a tiny fraction of it, which is hard to believe. But yeah, those guys are swimming in it and will be for the next decade or so.
And still so young.
Yeah.
And still so young. They're both in their early 20s.
Yeah.
And it's also crazy to think, this is the new face of tennis. It's been either Sinner or Alcaraz that has been in the Grand Slam final every year since 2023, when Djokovic, I think, won the U.S. Open.
That's right.
Which, interestingly, is the next tournament the next Grand Slam. So is there an anticipation that if we get a 3rd straight final with these guys, it's just cementing their legacy as one of the best rivalries in tennis history?
Absolutely. I think when I was working on the book last year, I sort of expected this rivalry to play out a little slower, but it's hit us all at once. It does seem like it's going to be very difficult for any of their peers to find some space to break in. But I think it's been very also interesting to see you bring up Djokovic, as he's still right there. And we've talked about this season as one of challenges physically, but if you look at who is taking him out at the end of these major tournaments, it's one of these guys.
It's Sinner. Yeah, it's Sinner.
As of late, it's been Sinner. Yeah. So it's so interesting when I think about the decisions that go into ending a career like Djokovic, and you have to think about how viable is it to win another major title. And it really is just these two guys getting in his way. So we'll see what decision he makes going forward, but the U.S. Open is going to be really interesting. Personally, I'm predicting another rematch between these two.
Yeah, it is remarkable looking at both Wimbledon finals for the men and the women. On the women's side, a completely opposite storyline, as this was the first time in 114 years that the women's final ended without one player winning a single game. Amanda Anisimova, unfortunately, one we were hoping to give America the first singles title to break that 9-year drought, but was unable to do so. What are your thoughts on just kind of how the women's final played out, especially in contrast to the men's final, as we are in this final minute of our conversation?
Yeah, as a New Jersey guy, very excited to see Anisimova playing well. As she was a teenage prodigy, and it's been a long route back to the top of the game, but I'm really excited to see what she can do going forward. Clearly outmatched by Iga, who was playing in her 6th major final, very experienced with this stage. For Iga, it was a matter of figuring out the grass courts, which she had ridden off earlier in her career, but has become one of the most phenomenal movers on that surface now. And yeah, tough that it wasn't much of a final, but I think both of those players will be very fun to track going forward.
Yeah. Absolutely, and even just for the Americans, given the fact that this is the third straight year at least an American has been in the final, which has been amazing. Gary Nathan, thank you so much. Once again, the book is called Changeover, The Rise of Alcaraz and Sinner. It's out August 19th. All right, friends, that's going to do it for this edition of Front Office Sports Today. We'll be back tomorrow with more news, including the latest from the Home Run Derby tonight in Atlanta. We'll see you then. Have a good day.